Welcome to the Love This podcast. I'm Bobby Blunt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 to the Fan in Dallas. Joined as always by former NFL scout Brian Broaddus. He is a Super Bowl winner. He is also the co-host of the G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105 to the Fan in Dallas. And he is the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network. And he is the godfather of the draft show, where you better not talk to this man about running backs in the first round, or Eric Chiafali you shouldn't talk to. Brian Broaddus, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Robert. Yes, I'm going to always defend the draft show. And I sent Eric to timeout. That I said,
I noticed.
Yeah, if you don't want to talk the draft, you go sit in timeout over there. But no, Eric and I, a lot of passion on our show yesterday about the draft, the NFL, about the running back position, a lot of different things. I come from an era where I think running back play is very, very important. I understand the metrics and the money and all that, and it's just Eric and I went at it pretty good about it. So only ask that people keep an open mind when they're talking about running backs.
Well, it's been settled for you, Brian, because Eric wanted to draft a running back in the 4th round, and the Dallas Cowboys can't do that now.
They can't do that. That's right.
The Cowboys on Tuesday went ahead and made a trade for a wide receiver. They go and get Jonathan Mingo from the Carolina Panthers, a guy we just studied in the draft last year out of Ole Miss, and somebody who has not been great. The metrics would tell you since he got into the NFL. Even when we watched his college tape, Brian, at Ole Miss, this isn't a guy who's going to run free. He's not going to run wide open. He's a contested catcher.
Yeah.
This is a guy who doesn't get a lot of separation even on his college tape, but great tracking the ball, the physicality. I think he's a willing route runner. I don't know that he's completely there yet, but he looked like he put in effort and put in time working on his route running. I remember when I saw the Ole Miss tape over the years, but Dallas gives up a 4th round pick here, which feels universally received as that's a little rich. But the Cowboys without a 4th round pick, 2nd year in a row after trading one for Trey Lance. Brian, your initial thoughts on going and getting Jonathan Mingo?
Don't have a problem with going out and trying to better your team with the player. I just think it's unfortunate that in a year where it appears you're not as good as you have been in the past, where you've won 12 games, where you might, win, 5-6 games. It just appears to me that a 4th round pick is going to be particularly valuable to you. I am a big, I talked about old school running back guy and all that, but I also really believe in the 4th round of an NFL draft. And the higher you are up the board, that is usually a player that you had a 3rd round grade on. That's somebody that you went through the draft, you went to the 1st round, you went to the 2nd round, you went to the 3rd round, and all of a sudden there were 2 or 3 guys left on that board that if you're positioned in the right way, you can maybe grab another 3rd round guy there in the 4th round. I just believe there's such value in that 4th round pick. My hope is that Jonathan Mingo comes in here and he does have some productive games. I don't know when that's going to be. I don't know how quickly the learning curve is going to be for him to be ready to play. He's got some special teams value to him, so maybe they're going to try and do some of that stuff. But I feel like, though, the 4th round pick, like a lot of people around the league, was a little much. But they probably, and Bobby, I don't know, maybe you've asked somebody in the organization. I haven't asked anybody yet, scrambling around doing stuff all day. But I wonder where he sat on their board. I know that Trey Lance sat in the top of the 2nd round. I know his grade was a 1.20. My guess is that Mingo was somewhere in that range in the 2nd round for them, unless you're going to tell me different.
I have not gotten a direct answer on that yet. I know just from thinking back on conversations that I had about Mingo at the time, I remember being left with the impression that he was in the 2nd for them.
And I think that's why they did what they did.
Yeah.
And it's, I like to say, hey, go get your player. I just feel like, though, to me, that if it was, okay, what I saw with what the Commanders did to go get, Lattimore, something like that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? that man, okay, there's a proven player. There's a guy that, has got skins on the wall. If you're going to go give a third or fourth round pick for a guy like that, I get it. I just have an issue. And, did you have to give a fourth round pick? Did to me, it seems like if you look at the way that Carolina has traded some of their players, especially trading their number one wide receiver at the time, it's a pick swap.
Yeah.
Could you not go in with the same plan? I mean, obviously that worked. Did you go in and immediately offer the 4 for the player and then think, okay, just kick us back a 7 and the player, and we'll give you the 4 and it'll all be good? It looked like to me that Carolina had a plan for, they didn't get a 4 for their number one wide receiver. How do they get a 4 for, their 4th or 5th wide receiver?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, I've been a part of this organization where we gave up 2 1s to get Joey Galloway. I don't know if you necessarily had to do that, and that was a long time ago. But there seems to be a little bit of struggle for, okay, what's the market and what is? I can't believe that Carolina called Dallas and said, "Hey, listen, if you want this guy, you can have him for a 4th." I just have a hard time believing that, especially when they pick swap when they pick swapped Johnson, right?
Who do you think picked up the phone? Because Jerry has generally said he's not one to pick it up, but this feels like, given what the compensation is, it feels like they picked it up.
I think the fact that is the way the compensation is, I think Dallas picked up the phone. Maybe, and I don't know. I'd love to be able to talk to Alex Loomis or, Terry Gray or Henry Schroka or any one of those guys over there in the pro personnel department. And I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. I'm sorry. Those are the cats that I know. I'm sure there's, when you evaluate the player, I don't know how you could say as a pro director or a pro scout that this is a 4th round player compensation wise. Yeah. I don't know how you say that. Not with 25 targets and 12 catches. This had to be something that, okay, we felt very good about the player. We felt very good about the player in the draft where we had a 2nd round grade, and they basically did the same thing they did with Trey Lance. We had a 2nd round grade on him. We would have drafted him in the 2nd round if we would have had the opportunity to draft him. So they felt like, well, fair compensation is the 4th round, which, I just look at what other teams are doing with these players, and I'm seeing established wide receivers go for far less.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing. And I applaud trying to go get players. I just don't like the price of what it took to get the player. That's my issues.
And let's think about it from the reverse side. Given what we've seen right now, would you be pretty happy if somebody gave you a 4th round pick, what you think is going to be a top of the 4th round pick for Mazi Smith?
Absolutely.
That's where Carolina was at with Jonathan Mingo, is about where Dallas is right now with Mazi Smith. In terms of Mazi actually went in the 1st round, went way higher. And you're saying, man, I'd be thrilled if I could get a 4th. And Jonathan Mingo's been equally probably disappointing for a lot of people there. And he went 20 picks later. Yeah. And so just thinking about it through that lens, think about how much we'd feel like, oh, you just fleeced somebody. They gave you a 4th for Mazi Smith. That's what this one feels like and is a little bit disappointing. You mentioned the 4th round pick and how crucial that can be. Dallas, Brian, since 2016, Dallas has drafted 4 Pro Bowlers in the 4th round.
Yeah, I knew.
They've had 2 others that were big-time contributors, Dalton Schultz and Dorrance Armstrong. So they've generally shown when they get a chance to sleep on their board and enter day 3 with a good idea of what's coming up in the 4th round, they do really well. And it's disappointing to me that they're not giving the scouts the chance to give them that advantage 2 years in a row with that 4th round pick.
For a team that is a draft and develop team, it's very difficult, because what's going to happen, Bobby, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you want, say they don't somehow, they could maybe back up in the 3rd and get somebody's 4th and, get back in it, but it might not be at the spot where they were. But if Dallas doesn't trade back or has to trade back in, it's going to cost them draft capital to get back in.
Yep.
Now, all of a sudden, you've given up a 4. Hopefully the player works out. If he doesn't work out, then you've given up a 4, and now you've had to use 3 picks basically for the player because you have to use probably 2 other picks to get back in the round. So now you've sacrificed 3 picks for 1 player because you made the trade, and now you're going to have to use 2 other picks to maybe get back in the round. So that's an expensive when you're a team that drafts and develops. That's expensive to say we're going to take 3 picks for 1 player if they want to get back in this round.
Yeah, and look, there was a lot of thought that Dallas way overpaid when they traded for Amari Cooper. That obviously worked out.
They threw a lot of dirt. They threw a lot of dirt on Dallas, and they threw a lot of dirt on Amari Cooper, and he worked out just fine.
Here's hoping the Cowboys look at it and say, hey, we feel we'll be able to get back in the 4th, and we got somebody that we think will be productive. Look, there's high upside there. The athleticism, size, speed stuff is good.
He's a physical guy with ball in hand. You know, and to be totally fair and honest, his quarterbacks that he's had to play with have been absolutely horrible. Yes. They can't get him the ball. And I know Andy Dalton has won 1 million games for the Cincinnati Bengals, but he is not very good throwing the football right now.
No, and Bryce Young hasn't.
And neither
been
is
good
Bryce Young.
either. Yeah. So I mean, it's something where you hope you're banking on the upside, but clearly this is a day right now where even if they hit, even if it clicks for them, you do feel a little bit like, man, you still probably spent more than you needed to in order for it to click. But
agreed.
Cowboys wanted to make a deal, and Jerry clearly wanted to improve this roster. You were listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, Dak Prescott with the hamstring strain in the Atlanta game. We didn't know exactly what was going to play out, but anytime somebody like Dak, who's played for 9 years and has dealt with injuries, tells you it's something like I've never felt in my life before.
Sure.
That gives you pause and makes you think, well, this might be something that's a little different. And sure enough, they get in there, they get the MRI, and they say, oh, yeah, this is not going to be a 1-week thing, a 2-week thing. Dak Prescott is going to be out for an extended period of time. Jerry Jones or Mike McCarthy said Cooper Rush is the one taking the mantle there. But Jerry Jones kind of left the door open for, I don't know, maybe Trey Lance could get some work. Maybe there could be some packages there. I think it's very possible we do see both of them get work in various capacities. Brian, how would you approach the next 4 weeks minimum, it looks like, with the quarterback situation? Are you saying, let's roll with Cooper Rush? Are you saying, I need to find out what I have in Trey Lance? He's about to be a free agent.
Yeah, I would like to go ahead and play Trey Lance just for the reasons of I'm going to be really, really selfish. I think I know what the ceiling is with Cooper Rush. Mm-hmm. I don't think Cooper Rush at the end of this campaign is going to get a significant contract. Now, maybe he'll find a way to win 4 games, 3 games like he did, whatever, and then someone says, oh, wow, this is really good. I don't see Cooper Rush being a starting type of a quarterback.
Yep.
I do believe, and this is very selfish on my part, I would like to see Trey Lance just because of the fact I'd like to see him in the regular season, but I'd also like to see if all of a sudden you can kind of do some things differently and offensively with some of the RPO stuff that maybe it might help your running game a little bit. But it'll also, if Trey Lance were to find a way to play well and to get a decent contract or a big contract for playing well, 2026, I get a compensatory pick for him.
Yep, you can max out at a 3rd rounder.
Yeah, so I would like to, if there's somehow some way I can maybe recoup my 4, and have him play at a level, and maybe you win some games. But I think you can, maybe he would give you a little bit of a shot in the arm. It might be wheels off at times, but if your offensive line, if Zach Martin's going to give up 7 pressures and Steele's going to give up 6 pressures, I might need a quarterback that can run around there a little bit. I might need somebody that all of a sudden it's one read and then gone, kind of a thing. It might not help CeeDee Lamb. It might not help Tolbert, or it might not, help Mingo or any of these guys right now. But if you could find a way to kind of maybe play a college offense with this guy. See what Green Bay did with Willis.
Yeah.
I mean, just something a little bit different. If you win, hey, good for you. If you lose, hey, that's, this season has been a disappointment to begin with. I think that, people saying, oh, well, they need to tank and this, that, and the other. I think they're at the point right now, personally, Bobby, where if they just play the games, they got a chance to lose.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah,
I mean, I don't see any massive swings. Now, maybe getting Parsons back, and who knows about Bland? I'm sure that they're struggling with Bland's, health, but and I don't think you're going to get Tank back until it's too late. So, go ahead and by the way, hey, Carl Lawson, tip of the cap to you for the way you played the other day.
Really well.
Yeah, him and Parsons, maybe they can find a way to rush the passer. But I'll tell you what, I'm interested in playing Trey Lance more than I am Cooper Rush.
Yeah, and to me, my opinion was if you weren't going to start Trey Lance, okay, what did you give up a 4th round pick for? If not for you've got a hurt quarterback. I understand they were trying to do some sort of leverage play there, which was silly to begin with, to think that they could get anything out of that, because you ended up giving up a 4th round pick and then still signing the biggest check in the history of the NFL. And so it puts them in a bad position where, to me, today was the day to decide where if he wasn't going to play in this window, you needed to make some sort of a move to get something.
Can I ask you a question, Bobby?
Yeah.
Do you think that Jerry, maybe not as a leverage play, do you think that Jerry went out and traded for Trey Lance with the intent of not signing Dak Prescott?
I think it was an insurance policy. And potentially
somebody talked Jerry into signing Dak Prescott.
I think Jerry always wanted to get Dak done.
Okay.
I think it was just, I think Jerry as sort of overseer and CEO role. I think if anything, that reflects that Jerry's circle, that maybe there were people who were fighting it. Because I think there's a group of 5-6 people, maybe more, that are all involved in their opinions matter in situations like these. And I think that there's a good chance that there was a couple people in that group who were like, I don't know that we want to do this. And because that was reflecting that. I don't think it was so much Jerry, but Jerry is just the guy who was building the consensus, was like, there's clearly some resistance here from my people. I don't think it was coming from Jerry specifically, but Jerry had to analyze it as like, why am I getting resistance from some people? That's where I look at it.
Do you think that Jerry heard the voices from outside? Do you think he asked Troy Aikman? Do you think he asked Michael Irvin? Do you think he asked Emmitt Smith? Do you think he asked Darren Woodson?
I think he likes to ask lots of people outside
the
room. We've heard he'll ask Jimmy stuff now these days.
No question.
I don't know how much, to be honest. I don't know how great the relationship is with Jerry, where and Troy, where it's a pick up the phone and, hey, Troy, how are things going right now? Just because I think things have been tense there at times in recent years. But yeah, I think he sought thoughts on it from a wide number of folks. But I think ultimately he personally, if he was just single guy ruling it, I think he wanted to get Dak done, but he was reflecting some hesitation maybe from the group. Not a majority, but enough of a voice within it that he went, okay, we've got to look at this a little bit here. But I do think that Lance was part of an insurance policy, as in case they make some sort of a move to go here. But also, I mean, I do think they look at it as, hey, if nothing else, you can always get something back for a quarterback. Like, quarterbacks are valued in this league. And my issue is, why aren't you doing anything to try and build that value at all? But like, to me, you've completely killed the value now, where if you just roll with Cooper Rush all the time, teams are going to go, okay, why are you not wanting to play him in this situation?
Absolutely.
And so, I don't know. That's where it is. Brian, do you think we're going to see, how much would you guess? Because I think we are going to see Trey Lance get work. I think Jerry
I absolutely do. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think that's going to look like?
I think it's going to be a deal where maybe they get in some situations. Now, the one thing that Trey Lance has shown that down in the red zone, it tends to be a problem for him. So I'd be real careful with that. But maybe if you're in some of those, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 situations, that you might want to think about doing something with Trey Lance. You know what I'm saying? That might be where I'd go there.
Yeah, I think putting him in certain packages is wise, especially in the red zone. I'm trying to remember, was it Philadelphia who was using Mariota for a little bit that way, where I think Mariota had gone to Philly and they would bring him in certain red zone packages just to, kind of change things up and threaten there. And yeah, I think Trey Lance can bring you some of that and can bring you some variety to your offense. So that's where I would take it if I was the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm. I would think that maybe you look at the situation, like I say, some short yardage stuff where it clearly turns into some RPO stuff. I would be a little worried about the goal line stuff because we saw at training camp and some of the preseason games, when you got down in the red zone, there would be some issues there. Some of the decision making, especially throwing the football. Now, if it turns into, running the football down there, I don't think that's a problem at all. But throwing the football is a whole different story.
Yeah. Look, I mean, there are times where he gets tunnel vision sometimes.
He does. You'll get some tunnel vision.
He doesn't see defenders all the time. You're listening to the Love the Star podcast, the Love the Stars and Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, it is time for our Dean Julia Love the Star mailbag. Time to turn things over to our dear sweet listeners, get their thoughts, their comments, their questions, and talk about the things they want to talk about. First question here from Casey Pringle, who I know listens regularly. Casey wants to know, in Jerry's time as owner, do you think this is the most heat he and the rest of the front office has felt from the fan base / media?
I know when I was with the Cowboys starting in 99, we went to the playoffs with Chan Gailey in 99, Dave Campo in 2000, Dave Campo in 2001, and Dave Campo in 2002. 3 straight 5-11 seasons. I personally myself felt a lot of pressure just because I was from Dallas and here's my hometown team is just, I'm a part of that and it's going awful. That was pressure. I think the pressure today is even more because you weren't that far removed from being in Super Bowls and winning Super Bowls. So there was pressure, but not like it is today. People know exactly the number of years this team has not been in an NFC championship game or been in a Super Bowl. And so I think fans are more on top of this team than they were back then. I think they were willing to give you a little bit more of a pass about things. Today, I don't think they're willing to give you a pass just because of the number of years it's taken for them to even. Now, they'll remind you of Stephen Jones loves to come on our station on 105.3 The Fan and talk about, 3 straight years of 12-5. But still, that's not, you haven't had playoff success.
Right.
And I think the fan base they're seeing other teams that have been losers over the years all of a sudden figure out how to be successful. And I think you need to be worried about this Commanders team, to be honest with you.
I think they're going to be good for a few years.
Yeah, with what they've done, what they've done with the quarterback. We all know that Dan Quinn's a really good coach. So, yeah, there was pressure. There was pressure on that organization, and ultimately the pressure got the owner to sell the team. And I don't think Jerry is going to sell the team, but I think that this fan base they've had about enough.
Yeah, and I think I will say it is. I don't know if this is the most the heat has been turned up on them. I think there have been times fans have been just as angry, media's been just as angry, or media's been just as critical. I think this is the most they've seemingly felt it, though. They haven't insulated themselves from it as much as I feel like in the past. Stephen Jones during the offseason sounded contrite at times. Like, look, we get it. It's not gone well. Jerry, I think, has felt it a little bit. I think Jerry is I think Jerry's biggest concern right now is apathy. I think that's something that's a fear for him right now with this fan base. And that's something that he's cognizant of. And so to me, I do think it's the most that they've probably felt it themselves, even if it's not the most that the fans have felt it. I'm sure the fans have felt it more. Media's been more critical. I know for me personally, 2020 felt like a worse team.
Yeah.
That felt like a worse football team. But I don't think they're feeling it as much as they did. I don't think 2020 they felt it as much as they do right now.
Yeah, I think to me this, Jerry, and I really never wanted to believe this, but Jerry does want to try and keep things to be relevant. I thought he was selling hopium the other day talking about trading. It's like, well, hey, we didn't win. Let's focus on something else. I'd be open to making a trade. Also, this is why I feel like that Jerry is all about the fan experience. That's the whole thing about the media, the tours and stuff like that. He is not going to stop people from wanting to come see his team and his building when it's a down year.
Yeah.
He's going to continue to open his doors and say, listen, it would be real easy for him to say, okay, we're going to stop the tours. The players have spoken, I'd be real interested to see if another coach comes in here and is open to that idea, is open to, hey, well, let's keep the tours going and let's do this. But Jerry is going to be all about the fan experience, whether it's good or bad. He knows that. And so he's going to acquiesce to the fan base that still wants to come and see and still wants to come and do, even though there's a larger number of the fan base that's not interested in doing that anymore.
Next question here from Chris Hodnett. Which staff would be best for the 2025 Cowboys, Brian? We've got Bill Belichick as your head coach, Josh McDaniels as your offensive coordinator, Matt Patricia as your defensive coordinator, or Ben Johnson as your head coach, Mark Brunell as your offensive coordinator, Robert Saleh as your defensive coordinator. You going with experience or you going with the young guns, the up-and-comers?
Where's Mark Brunell? Is he on that staff at Detroit?
Mark Brunell's the quarterback's coach for Detroit.
Well, that's Mark and we drafted Mark in Green Bay, and I was with Mark in Jacksonville. I didn't know I knew that he was involved in teaching, and I didn't know he was involved in coaching. Good for him.
Hold on real quick. Give me your Mark Brunell, Tom Coughlin story real fast.
Oh yeah. Mark got in a game. Mark, I assume Mark is still religious. And I mean religious in a way, he's a believer and, and I'm not making fun of this. I'm just saying this was the story.
No, just a funny interaction between the coach and the quarterback.
And Mark goes, one day he threw 3 interceptions and he goes, today was God's will. I threw these interceptions. It was God's will. Tom Coughlin looked at him and said, Mark, God did not want you to throw 3 interceptions today.
I like that.
We had in that locker room in Jacksonville, we had the Saints and the Sinners. We had Mark Brunell and Tony Boselli and all these guys that were Christian guys on one end of the locker room. And on the other side, it was the most raging party you've ever been with. Guys, Hardy. We had guys that were crazy players over there. Fred Taylor. It just, they were fun. Like I say, we had one end was crazy dudes and the other end were the Saints. But I think me personally, I would like to take the opportunity because I got to help my quarterback. Give me the Ben Johnson staff if you could, please.
Yeah, I think that's probably the play. I'd be a little concerned about how things would work out with a McDaniels, Belichick, Patricia staff. But, they've gotten results before, so I wouldn't argue with anybody on that.
Yeah, I would. The thing I would worry about is, and I think the Cowboys, this is where I think Will McClay and maybe Stephen Jones would not want to deal with Bill Belichick. Because Bill Belichick, and I'm just being honest here, I respect the heck out of Bill Belichick. Mike Lombardi, one of my best friends, and Bill Belichick. You can watch Bill and Mike and Matt Patricia and those guys do a podcast every week if you want, teaching you football. I think they're really good. They're really I don't know necessarily, and I could be really wrong about this. I've never had anybody correct me about it. I don't believe that Will and Steven would like Bill Belichick coming in here and telling them how they need to run their personnel department. I think Will and Steven are really comfortable with draft and develop and don't have to go play in free agency and that kind of stuff. Belichick is going to be fine. We're gonna try and go out and get players. We're going to draft. I think that Bill would want to be really involved with personnel, much like Bill Parcells was. Bill Parcells was involved, and him and Steven worked together, and there were fights that we had, and there was some good and there was some bad. But I don't know if Will and the scouts would really want Bill Belichick in here questioning every single move that they made.
Yeah, I think Bill Belichick coming here might be the end of Will McClay's time here in Dallas.
I agree. Yeah.
That does it for us here today on the Love the Star podcast. Thank you so much for joining us here on this election night edition. When you hear this, I assume we'll know probably pretty close who won. Now, we won't know for sure, Brian, but we'll have an idea of it.
Some states are going to take their times counting their votes. Trust me.
I'm sure it'll be like Friday probably, and so
Sure.
we'll update you on Friday on the election.
There you go.
And Jonathan Mingo and everything else going on with the Dallas Cowboys. For Brian Broaddus, I'm Bobby Belt. We'll talk to you guys again later. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.